Welcome to you all to this inaugural lecture of the Research Master in Sociology and Demography at UPF. Oh, wow. And welcome to our new master students from this year cohort. This is mostly a class for you, but also welcome to other members of the Socio-Demography group, DemoSoc here at UPF, because we arrange the master all together. We teach in the master together, so this is also thanks to them that we are here today. And also welcome to other members of the faculty, and I recognize some faces from other institutions here in Catalonia, so I'm very happy that you are here. And most of all, welcome to our guest speaker, Fabrizio Bernardi, today. I don't know whether some of us already know Fabrizio, of course, some don't, so just a few words about him. Fabrizio is a professor of sociology at the UNED in Madrid, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, in English would be the National Distant University, correct? So it's a bit, yeah, UNED, it's easier. He was also formerly full professor of sociology at the European University Institute, and also is editor-in-chief of the European Sociological Review, which is, I would say, the flagship sociological journal that we have in Europe, at least. And Fabrizio, I mean, is a great scholar. He's probably most known for his research on social stratification and educational inequality, notably his work on compensatory advantage, something that we will also talk about, I think, in a couple of weeks in class as well. But also he's done a lot of work in the field of social demography, particularly regarding family formation and the role of the family structure and family forms in affecting children's life outcomes as well. And today I believe he's going to give a talk about the role of luck in educational attainment, which I believe is extremely important and is also a bit a neglected topic, I would say, in the sense that as social scientists, myself included, I would say in general, we want to uncover the underlying social structures behind social and life outcomes, but this comes at the expense of overlooking a bit the role of randomness and random variability. That is perhaps one of the most important things shaping our, in the end, overall outcomes. So I'm looking forward to your talk, Fabrizio. Again, welcome, and thank you for accepting our invitation. And the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much. So I think I will give all the talk bending. Thank you very much, Giampiero, for the kind presentations, and thanks for the invitation to give this lecture. I also want to thank the colleagues who have come here today, and I have to somehow apologize because I conceived this as a lecture for the students, but I still hope that it could also be interesting for you. As Giampiero has mentioned, this is a talk on luck and the role of luck in economic and occupational success. It is somehow a new area that I'm trying to study, and I will present some results from these attempts that I'm doing to study this topic. And let me see if this is better.
So I have to say that I've been thinking a bit about this talk, and you see the title, the topic is a bit esoteric, luck, so it's kind of astrology, and at the same time is very technical, what I'm suggesting in the title, so I thought it was the worst choice I could take for an inaugural lecture. And so I've tried to relate the specific paper that I'm going to present to broader issues, really thinking about you, that you're starting this, this path, starting a master, and maybe you also want to offer a PhD. And so I'm trying to connect this general study of luck to more general issues related to research in social stratification and social demography. And at the end, I have also some ideas about research questions. So, as I said, the topic of the lecture is trying to identified the role of luck in explaining educational and occupational success. And the link with social stratification is that I'm interested in studying how the role of luck varies depending on the social class of origins of the subjects. And so, as I said, I make some general reflection on social demography and social stratification, and also in terms of methods, I will focus on these very specific methods that is somehow maybe advanced if you are starting a master, because I'm already jumping to limitations of common studies. So I'm also trying to discuss other issues like social genomics, so just to provide you some ideas that you might want to apply when we have to think about your master thesis. So it's rather broad, and also sibling models try to give you some hints on how they work. So, but let me start with a small story, just to clarify. When I say luck, what are the type of processes I'm after? So this is the story of an Italian Nobel Prize for Physics in 1994, and this is like the small bio that he had to write when he won the Nobel Prize. So he says that when he finished high school, he applied to study physics at the Normale in Pisa. That is a kind of great école in Italy. Really, the top students are admitted there. And then there was a competition to enter, and he was not admitted. Only 10 students all over Italy, highly competitive. So really, the nerds, the genius in physics can enter into the school. He was 11th, so he was not admitted. So he decided, okay, I study engineer. He moved to Milan. He started studying engineer. And after some months, he was informed that one of the other students who had won the contest for entry had withdrawn, and so he was admitted. So I'm just quoting, I'm recollecting this apparently insignificant fact, since it has determined, and almost completely by accident, my career as physics. So then he moved to Pisa, he started studying physics, then he made a PhD, and okay, then he won the Nobel Prize. But all, at the end, the final step, winning the Nobel Prize, was determined by this rather fortuitous chance, lucky events, that he was admitted, he was just at the threshold, someone withdrew, and then he was admitted. So these are the type of small events that I'm trying to study in their influence on what we happen to become educationally and occupationally. So let me have other examples. I want to say that today I will present a quantitative study. I'm a quantitative scholar. I've also made, prior to this talk, a qualitative study on PhD students at the European University Institute. So I hope that some of you, after the master, decide to study a PhD and you consider that institution, that is one of the top in Europe. And so we made interviews in order to understand the role of luck, whether luck was instrumental for the people who were admitted at the PhD in order to get up to that step. So this is an extract of an interview, and you see this guy was telling us that he had an exam in a UK system, and you have to get above 70 to get an A grade and get a scholarship, and then he went to the exams and he just got 71, so just above the thresholds for 1 point. And the reason is that the night before he was reading somehow a newspaper, The Economist, and there was an article and then there was a question, and he was lucky that the question was related to minimum wage and he could write something, and he was 71 instead of 69. If he had got 69, he wouldn't have been able to enroll to the master and then to the PhD. So just one small event, 1 point, 1 digit, and then there are stories in Spain, if you're Spanish, of people, you know, in order to get to the university, there is a very strict cutoff to certain careers, and just for 1 digit, so you need 13.2, and there are people that have got 13.1 and that are not admitted to the careers. And this 1 point digit can be due to, you know, whatever, you know, that it is cold, you haven't slept, you had a quarrel with your parents the day before, and so on, you just make a mistake. So just another example, and this is a student, first generation, so low class, and he was telling us, I was very lucky because I had one teacher that was not supposed to be in my class, and this teacher was very instrumental because he motivated me, he gave me trust, he told me that, or she told me that I could study, that I should go on studying in high school. Otherwise, according to the account of this student that is now making the PhD, he wouldn't have been able to to go to the university, because nobody ever told him that he could attend the university. And this teacher was not supposed to be in his class. It was just a substitution, something passing by. And so there are these encounters of trajectories, my trajectory and the trajectory of the teacher, that somehow happen to intersect. And so these are the type of luck. So when I talk about luck, I'm also thinking about lotteries and other mechanisms, but these are the two type of examples. That there is an institutional luck that is given by rules, like institutional rules, those who are admitted and those who are not admitted. And then there are also another type of luck that is encounters, somehow given by the complexity of our lives, that we happen to be in different places and we happen to meet people. Okay. So now I make a step back, okay? So just to understand, when I talk about luck, it's not astrology, but this type of socially driven situation, either institutionally or through encounters, okay? Interjections of trajectory. So in your master dissertation, in your MA thesis, most likely, you will try to study something that can be expressed in this equation. You have a dependent variable, so probably, but I would say 95% of you will end up doing something like this. You have a dependent variable, maybe it's education, maybe it's income, maybe it's the risk of unemployment, overqualification, the effect of schooling on educational performance. So depending on your supervisor, of the professor who are here, fertility, or the risk of divorce, the penalty for children. So you're interested in the effect of some X on some Y. Plus there is an epsilon in your equation, something that you are not able to explain. Okay, so I just go on. For instance, you can study social mobility or education inequality, then the focus is on SES, socioeconomic status, plus other variable X on a given Y. Or you can study the effect of family structure. For instance, Y could be the educational attainment of children, and family structure could be divorce, something that I've done many times with Diederik, with here. So, or you can study gender inequality in education, in income, in time use, and so on, migration background. So recently, and this is already some idea for your master thesis, the focus is on heterogeneity. So you don't simply study the effect of socioeconomic status, but you study the interaction between grades, so your performance at school, and social background. And you want to study how social class, or let's say how your performance at school depends differently on your decision to go to the university, depending on your social class of origins. Or you want to study how the penalty, the disadvantage associated of growing up with separated parents, is different for low-class students and high-class students. So this is the second type of example. And the third type of example, you want to study neighborhood. This is like a very trendy topic nowadays, really studying how the place where you were born affects your life chance later on. And then you want to study how this effect of the neighborhood, you are born in the Raval, or you're born in Lavapiés, or you're born in a, let's say, rough neighborhood, and how the negative effect on educational, I mean, just stereotyping, but how the negative effect of growing up in a place where there is crime, where there are Airbnb, so that's a nice topic. So the effect of trolleys around you, whether this is a negative effect on educational attainment, differs depending on whether your parents are highly educated or low educated, so heterogeneity, okay? So these are most probably what we are going to do. So, and probably for a master thesis, you can take this type of equation or this type of questions and you try a new specification. Maybe you add an interaction. You don't simply study the interaction between social status, social class, and grades, but maybe you also want to study it for men and women. Maybe adding, you know, intersectionality, you know, you have a third order interaction. Or maybe you use new data, so already something that was already done, but maybe use administrative data for Catalonia, for the Netherlands, so better data. You use a new method, so this implies a linear regression, but you can use random forest or, you know, more sophisticated method. Or you try to estimate it causally with natural experiments and whatever. Then, if you start a PhD, maybe this is not enough, you have to look for a different research question and to do something new. But for the master, I think this is the situation. So now, the topic of today. We have a problem still, and the problem is that this type of model that I was discussing, so my type of research that I've done in general, we are only able to explain a small portion of the variance in Y. So if I want to study years of education or income as a dependent variable, and I include many X, okay, and I want to focus on the effect of social origins. So I want to study how the level of education or income of your parents affect your own income, then I include gender, I include whatever additional controls that you think might affect your own income. The problem is that we are able to explain only about, let's say, 40%, in any case, less than 50% of the variability in income, okay? So if I take a sample of 100 people in the population, I ask their income, and then I ask about their social class, level of education, gender, all the typical variables we study in social stratification and social demography. At the end, we are only able to explain 50%. The other 50% is something that we are not able to explain. And it's the same, I mean, it has not been done, but I guess it's the same for the risk of divorce. In some countries, 50%, okay? It's like tossing a coin. It's very difficult to explain who is going to divorce and who is not going to divorce. So, and we have got this uncertainty, this unpredictability that is the topic of this talk, okay? And I have to say that this is not something new. There is this book that is famous in 1972. So I was thinking that for you, this must look like a book from the Paleolithic, okay? So probably your parents were not born, or I'm not sure. So it's like for us, like a book from the 40s. So for us, I mean to the colleagues. I have to say that the author of this book is still alive. So it looks very old, but it's still contemporary, okay? But it's like 50 years ago. So they wrote this very important book in US, and it's a book on trying to study whether it matters more the school or the family in explaining inequality. And then they made like a claim. So they found what I was telling you, that these models where you include many independent variables that are the typical suspects if you're a sociologist, as I said, the type of school, family structure, social background, education, gender, race, blah, blah, blah. We're only able to explain 30% of the observed variance. And then they made a small commentary and they said, probably the epsilon, this one, in the equation, that is the error term, so it's the residuals, the difference for what I predict and what I observe, probably luck has something to say in this error term. And this 300-page book basically was discussed referring to this commentary, and all the famous sociology were very against this idea. And so they received a lot of criticism, saying, no, it's not luck, we cannot talk about luck. The law R square, that is the measure to measure our capacity to predict, is low because we are not including the important variable. Come on, you are not including genes, so you are not including neighborhood, you are not including personality, so the big five, and so this is the problem. Or other critiques. The method is inadequate. We are just using linear regression. The problem is that it is more complex. We have to include interaction. Variables that we are not including is the neighborhood. Okay, and then there is bad data. You've got bad data, and the reason is that the data are not good. Okay, so this 50 years ago. So the problem is that the situation has not improved. Over these 5 decades, we've got much better data. So there are administrative data in some countries, Scandinavian country, but also in Spain, there are very good administrative data in general. In Catalonia, but also in Spain, INE now have got very competitive with the Nordic country administrative data. So basically we have data on all the population, so it's not a problem that we have got a small sample. We have data on genes, and I will use today in research. So we know somehow the genetic propensity that the subject have for education. We have geocoded data, so we know where the people were born in the neighborhood. So we have got, and also we have got more sophisticated methods like AI, machine learning, but still, the results is still, we are not very good in predicting. We are still below 50%. So this is a bit the starting point of the, and let's say over these 5 decades, it was not a problem, and maybe it's not a problem yet, Okay, people are just, I want to know whether I want to know whether schooling affects learning. Even if the effect is small, and it is totally legitimate as a research question. So I want to have a causal estimate of overqualification. So I'm talking about research here, of which I'm totally, so you want to study, let's talking about my research, whether there is a divorce penalty, whether parental separation has a negative effect on educational attainment of the children. Okay, so, and I don't care if then it remains 50% of the educational attainment remains unexplained. I just want to focus on a specific effect. This is fine, but somehow we are forgetting that there is another 50% that we don't explain. And so this is a bit the motivation, as Giampiero said. Luck is a concept that is completely forgotten in sociology, but not in philosophy and not in history. And I would say that the situation in sociology is similar to economics, and maybe in political science is a bit different because they are interested in this macro contingency when something big happens and brings transition to democracy somehow unexpected. But still, in sociology, I think the concept is forgotten because sociologists, all the debate over the last 50 years, but even before, I mean, we are sociologists, we want to explain. We want to explain how the society, either in terms of social structures or in terms of individual decision, determine a given outcome. So we want to study suicide as Durkheim, and then you look at the social structure. No? You want to study social class, how our behavior is driven by our belonging to a certain given class. Or if you are rational choice, you want to study how we make individual decision, and this individual decision produce segregation, for instance, in space, because people prefer to sit close to their friends, and so you've got, I don't know, women, professors are sitting in one place, and researchers are sitting in another, or educational choices, and whatever. And so the concept of luck is a bit squeezed by these debates on individual choice or macro determinants. And I would say that luck is at the meso level. I will try to discuss this maybe in the discussion, and I'm thinking about this topic, okay? So this is ongoing work, as I said. So let me say a few words. So what I've done, since in sociology there is very little, I've looked at philosophy in order to make a kind of review of different understanding of luck. And so in philosophy, if you read philosophy, there are many, many types of luck with labels, okay? There is brute luck, optional luck, moral luck, so epistemic luck. So it is a central topic in philosophy because a key topic in philosophy is free will. So the extent that the subject is owner of his own action. And so if something is driven by luck, it clashes with the concept of free will. So if you want to decide if an action is good or bad morally, you have to take into account how you deem someone responsible for that action. And also in epistemology, that is the study in philosophy of what is true, whether a statement is true or not, there is the issue that you can have a true belief just by luck. And then many books to argue whether that is true or not. If you get to say, to make or to say something that happens to be true, but you get there by luck, is that true really or not? So I don't want to enter this debate, but there are pages and pages, so in a different way. But for what interests sociology, I think that there are three types of luck that are relevant and really related to what we do. So one is constitutive luck. That means luck in what you are. And this has to see with your genetic endowments, so whether you are healthy or not, but also with the social class in which you are born. They transmit you values and cultural schemas and whatever. So this is what is known as the genetic lottery or social lottery also, no? The lottery at birth. Then there is circumstantial luck, that is the luck in where and when you happen to be. So just to make an example, in philosophy, there is discussions on someone, so the example was someone that was born in Germany in 1920, and then become Nazi and working in a concentration camp in a lager, okay? And they argue if the same person were born not in Germany, but in Argentina, for instance, this person would have been a nice worker, and it's simply to what extent is responsible for being socialized into this Nazi ideology. I'm not following this example. I'm just thinking that sociologically we have concepts for constitutive luck that are ascriptive factor at birth, whether you are a man or a woman in a given society, more or less gender equal, whether you are upper class or lower class, and also now we have information on the genes that can tell you whether you are, you know, for instance, you have some difficulties in learning, and you know, I don't want to enter in the debate of nature and society and nurture, but let's say luck in what we are, and we have concepts and measure for this type of luck, the lottery at birth. Also for circumstantial luck, we have concepts such those of cohort, generation, period, no? So if you were born in Spain and you were 18 when there was the 15M, probably you got a political socialization. So we have got these concepts, no, for what happens in time, either as a cohort or, and also place. We've got many indicators. Of course, it make a difference if you're born in Europe or in another country. What we are not really able to say anything about is the third type of luck that refers to the examples I was presenting you at the beginning, that in philosophy is labeled chancy luck. And this luck related to things that happen to us. Okay, so the first is luck in what we are, and we are lucky. You are lucky because you were born in Europe, probably, and you are lucky because you had a health endowments with a nice hospital where you were born and so on. But then what I'm interested is what happens to us from the time we were born on. And so, in general terms, and this is something that also comes from sociology, we can define this type of luck as chance plus consequences. So something happens at chance and has implication for you. That can be good, then it's good luck, or bad, and then it's bad luck. If you get a leaf that from the wind by chance come to your shoulder, I mean, it's something very unlikely, but it's not luck as long as it has no consequences, okay? So it's not simply something that happens, but it's something that has consequences for us, either good or bad. And now, there is another definition, which for me is the most interesting for sociology, and it is labeled the modal account of luck. And the idea in this philosophical approach to luck is that the world that we live, your life, is only one of the infinite type of life that are happening in very close worlds. So we live in one world, but there are many parallel worlds that are happening. And so luck is just an event that might happen or not. And so it's something that is very fragile, that can happen in this world, but not in another that is very close to us. If you think about movies or books, this is an idea that is commonly used, I don't know, if you have seen the movie Match Point by Woody Allen, or Paul Auster, the book 4321, he just writes a novel, it's 4 novels, and it's the same subject, same people, but simply one small event changes, and then all the plot, all the story is completely different. So you can think about your life, and there is a single event that happens. It could have not happened easily, but it happened. So there is a moment when things can happen or not happen, and then brings you on a different trajectories. Actually, the example they make is that of a sniper that shoots someone, and there is a bullet just passing very close. So this is written 20 years ago, and the bullets pass very close, and so there is a different war where you are killed, and the story, your story for sure changes, and this, in other words, is not changed. So I'm thinking about Trump, so 1 centimeter and everything would have changed, okay? So, and the concept is of fragility. So luck is a fragile, that means that could have easily not happened, event with significant consequences. And I'm thinking about trajectory. There is something that happens. In the case of the Nobel Prize, the fragility is someone has withdrawal. By chance, by not chance, is not clear, but still, this event could have also not happened. And his life would have been completely different. In the other example I was giving of the 70-71, so it's really, it could have easily been 69, and then there would have been consequences. And also the teacher, the substitute teacher, could have not gone to that class. So, this type of student would have not gone to the university. I think this is interesting because it opens to a topic that if you, as you will probably do, a course on research done and causality, there is the concept of counterfactual. That means how your life trajectory would have developed if these things, if this event, if this lucky event would have not happened. Okay, so now, this is the link to social stratification. So, for me, the interesting part of all of this is to think about random events of the type I was discussing before that can lead subjects on different educational trajectories. When I think about lucky events, just to make you an example, is like just passing an exam, as I said, 71, instead, whenever there is a threshold, you just make above the thresholds instead of below. And this making it can be just answering one question out of 50 correctly. And maybe that day you haven't slept, or maybe that day you are lucky because you managed to copy from someone, or maybe there is no air conditioning, and or maybe there is a lot of pollution that is another factor that determines your educational attainment. So this is one example. Or meeting someone, I mean, this is another example. Someone said, oh, I was queuing for a kebab, and I met someone that was a friend of another friend and told me that I could apply for a scholarship, and then I applied for the scholarship and I got the PhD, okay? Bad luck would be like, you're unlucky, you are 15, you are out with your friends, maybe not in Spain, in US, and then the police stops you, and maybe you have some weeds or something, but something somehow irrelevant, and this police encounter can be catastrophic consequences maybe for your study. Or you failed exams. Instead of 71, you get 69. Or maybe there is a death of a relative, or a parental separation. Okay, so this could be bad luck. And my general thinking is that upper class students, since they've got an upper class family, have got the resources to overcome struck of bad luck. So somehow they are sheltered from these things that happens negatively by chance, while in general, educational trajectory of low-class students are more fragile. Means that if they got a struck of good luck, they go up, like a substitute teacher, while they're more exposed to random, unlucky events that might happen. So the general hypothesis for the study is that the educational trajectory of low-class students are more fragile compared to the educational trajectory of upper-class students. So in a nutshell. There is a complication in what I'm going to do, is that educational attainment, in terms of progressing to university, master, PhD, is based on a selection on ability, on grades and passing exams, and on somehow proved ability to be in the educational system. And so we can observe variations also due to luck only among those students who are at risk of making this transition, if you want. And so only among the students who have the capacity to go to the university, to the master, and to a PhD. So what I'm going to do, and this is really important, what I'm going to do, is that I will focus on students taking into account their propensity to learn and their propensity to attain education. So to a certain extent, what I'm saying is conditional on having the ability to study, okay? To study and to go to the university. And then I'm going to study among these students the underlying idea, you are smart, So I don't want to use this because somehow are ambiguous question, but let's say I focus on smart kids from low class, and the argument is that if you're a smart kid from low class, you need also some stroke of luck in order to get to the upper level of education, while the same is not true from if you're a smart kid from the upper class, you go, no problem. Okay, so that is the somehow underlying idea. So how we do this? The major problem is that we don't have indicators of luck of these events in our data. So I'm now thinking how to collect this data, but in general, we don't have X, no, to include in other model that see, okay, I've got a measurement of luck. So so I just, no, this is, I go back to here, but I want to explain you, I go to the methodological part just for a second. So what we do in this paper. So you see, there are two equations. The equation above is the one I was discussing before. So we have an outcome that is years of education or income or whatever. And then you have X that are the independent variable and error. The idea of this model is that, okay, we go back to the idea that luck is in the error term, so what we are not able to predict, and then we have a second equation where we focus on the error term, and we want to predict which factors affect the error terms, okay? So this is called variance function regression, and is a model that has been applied usually in research in the labor market. And the idea is that, in general, I would say 99% of the model in sociology are interested in the first equation. That means difference among you in levels, who gets more or less education for certain groups, who has more income or less income. There is very few, in general, we are not interested in variation. Why is there more variations among one group than in the others? And I think this is an interesting sociological question as well. And we try to link this question to luck. These type of models have been used in the labor market, where X, consider the X there, are occupation, or maybe even educational level, okay? But in general, occupation. And then with the first equation, you study differences in income between occupation. Okay, so if you're a doctor, let me make the example. If you're a manager, you earn more money compared to a, I don't know, lawyer, for instance. Or maybe if you're a worker, skilled worker, let's say, if you're a manual worker, you earn more than someone working as a waiter. Okay? Between. With the second equation, you can show that if you're a waiter, maybe there is more variations within waiters than among manual workers, because maybe the employment in the manual workers in factories is more unionized, there are collective agreement, and if you're a waiter, you can work in the bar nearby, or you can work at a fancy restaurant where also a waiter earn maybe 3,000 euro because you are a qualified waiter, so it's less regular. So in general, the within group inequality is interpreted as measuring income insecurity or risk. So there is more risk in certain occupation compared to others. What we are doing, because this is joint work with Alessandro Ferrara from BZB and Gaia Ghirardi from Bologna, is to interpret the second equation, where the dependent variable, the residuals, in terms of luck. And we argue that we should find a larger effect on residuals, so what we are not able to explain, if we look at the educational trajectories of low-class students compared to upper-class, conditioning on their ability to go to the university. So this is I know it's very basic, but this is the idea of moving to look at variance and say, if there is luck and the educational trajectory are more fragile, we should observe less capacity to predict. I'm saying this because I think this is important. In general, in the study by sociology, you want to have a variable that operationalizes your hypothesis. Well, I think that it is equally interesting to have some narratives where you draw implication and you say, if it is true, what I'm trying to argue, that educational trajectory of low class are more fragile, the implication is that we should observe more residuals among the low class. Okay, so it's a kind of implication analysis, which I think is also interesting for a completely different topic you might want to do in your master thesis. So now I go back on the data and the variable. So the data, we use data from US, data set that is called AdHealth. The dependent variable is years of education, and the independent variable, we use socioeconomic status of the students. It's like parental education and parental income and parental type of occupation they had. And now I start a small excursus on sociogenomics. We have a variable that is called polygenetic index, that is a measure of genetic endowments to achieve education. So this type of research is called sociogenomics, and is a field that is fastly evolving over the last 10 years. And the idea is that we are able now to collect information on genoma, on certain genetic characteristics that affects behavioral traits. It's very controversial. I mean, it's expanding very fast, so if you work in the field, you have no problems. If you try to apply this idea in social stratification or social demography, you have a lot of problems because you meet a lot of resistance from people that think that you are a fascist or you are like a genetic determinist, eugenetics, and actually, so I think it's very interesting. It's somehow a risky field. No. I mean, all we have got the same sound, so there is always, is it mine? So, just to explain what it is. So, imagine that in this, just to make it easy, in this data set, we've got a number, we've got a variable that express the genetic propensity for education. Then you've got other number, other PGE that express the genetic propensity to have a child. The genetic propensity, now there is a market. You can have a genetic propensity for everything, okay? The one that is functioning, let's say, better are those like the genetic propensity for weight, for being overweight, or for being height, okay? But now there are also for behavioral traits like being employed or being right-wing even, okay? So just, but it's a number. How does it work? The idea is that we have a data set like AdHealth, a normal survey with 10,000 people, and the people in this data set, on these people, the researchers collected some genetic sample, like saliva or whatever. So we have information on their genome. Then, on a completely different data set, usually a UK biobank that are very large. So maybe some of you have heard about this genetic testing that can tell you how many, what is the proportions of, I don't know, Viking genes you have, or Chinese or European. So people are very proud if there is some Vikings percent or Italian, no, I'm not sure. And then you get this, you pay 70 euro and they give you these genetic percentages, and it is completely fake because it is changing every 2 months, and there are people who have made a tattoo of that and now have to change the tattoo. But what you do, when you do this, you have also to fill some forms, and you give the data to this data bank. And some data bank give this information for free if you donate your data to them. Donate means, okay, then you can use my information also on the educational level I have, my income, and whatever. So they've got this huge data set with more than 1 million. So it's a trick. So they made this trick. I give you this test, the results, and you let me use your data. So what they do on this huge, now it's 1 million, but probably it's more than 1 million, they make this very basic associational study. They look at specific small piece of the genome called SNPs, and they just make an association. They look millions of these SNPs, and they look whether they are associated with a given income. is really deterministic. They study the association with no priori hypothesis or theory. They produce this plot that is called Manhattan plot, like skyscraper, and when you see a tower, a skyscraper, means that that specific part of the genome is associated with a given outcome, in this case educational, based on these million people. And so based on this large data set, they identify the SNPs that are associated with a given outcome. And then they say, okay, this small part is strongly associated to the outcome, so I give to this part a strong weight. This part, nothing, so I don't consider it. This part, a bit. And then they construct weights, and then they bring weights, these weights, back to the data set of AdHealth and compute this index that is called polygenetic index that you can use as an indicator. And I want to say, this is not deterministic. So it's not that if you have high propensity for education, it translates in higher education. It explains rather little, really little, okay? And is full of problems as an indicator, okay? Because it does not only reflect genes, but also social class, for instance. So I warn you, it's not a magic index for really saying this is IQ. And it's really the genetic component of intelligence. No, we are still far from it, but it is evolving very fast. So if you are interested, and the debate, I want to say, is not anymore whether it is nature, that means genes, or society, that means social class, nature versus nurture. What it is interesting is in the interaction, as I was saying before, the heterogeneity, how a given genetic propensity is boosted or repressed by the given environment in which you live. So it's really sociological, okay? This time, the interaction. Is that not want to say, no, the social class is more important than genes, everything, no, or genes are more important, no. I think the really interesting debate is how people that have got the same genetic endowments can flourish or not, depending, and how social class, and this is my study, can compensate if you don't have a strong genetic attitude toward education. This is compensatory advantage that Giampiero was mentioning before. Other studies show that if you are from the upper class, you are still able to attain a decent level of education, even if your genetic index wouldn't suggest that you shouldn't get up to that level. Okay, so as I said, this I've already explained. Now, there is an additional complication, and this is also interesting. I think that if you find in your master thesis like a research question that has already been addressed, and you say, okay, now I try to address causality, and in order to address causality, I compare siblings within the same family, you have already a master dissertation, I think. I don't know the standard here, but I would say yes, because you make a step forward, it's cumulative. So the idea in this case is that there are many unobserved factors that affect educational attainment, and particularly there is a problem with the PGE. This index is also reflecting many issues that are not genetics, but are related to the family of origin. So there is a problem of measurement. So the idea is, okay, if I compare the PGE, this genetic propensity of two siblings, okay, so the genetic component you get from your parents, the same parents, is really, if there are differences in the genes of a brother and a sister, or two brothers or two sisters, is really luck. You get some genes from your mother, you get some genes from your fathers, you get a combination of them, and this is a genetic lottery. It's something that resembles most closely a genetic lottery, okay? And so if I, instead of studying the effect of PGE, and the effect of PGE on Y, on years of education, I study the effect of the difference of PGE. So I study the propensity of brother 1 minus the propensity of brother 2, and then I study the difference in their level of education. Doing this, I partial out all the characteristics of the brothers that are the same. Like, for instance, parental motivation, or the place where they lived, or whatever, the characteristic of their grandparents. So everything that the two children have in common is taken out from the study, is controlled. So this method of siblings is effectively allowing you to exclude any type of bias that is due to common characteristic of the parents. So in many studies, is a good approximation, at least is a good attempt to correct for endogeneity. This is a keyword you will hear a lot if you make the PhD also. It's not free of problem, but so what we do is that we use this variance function regression model, and in particular, as I said, we are interested in the second equation, and as you see, in this specification, I've already introduced the interaction. So we've got PGE, and in the first equation, we make the interaction with, let's say, propensity and social background, and we do it also in the second one. And then we perform a sibling analysis, so we look at within families, as I said, the difference in this PGE is like, if we study two brothers and one of them is more, let's say, able to succeed in education than the others, is this reflected in more years of educations? But also we ask, if there is a difference among brothers, do we observe more variations in the difference in years of educations if you are from the upper class or lower class? If you are from the upper class, we say, okay, it doesn't matter. There is one, I simplify, a smarter brother, a less smarter brother. They all go to the university, and they don't observe much variation. Well, the idea is, if you come from a lower class, this is also translated in more variance, okay? So this is what we try to do. So the results, I don't know. So, okay, let's say something about this, even if it is somehow complicated. So this is the PGE for educational attainment. That means the propensity, the distribution. It is standardized. So this is a very high PGE. So you are very clever or very, I mean, it's not only clever because this is really an association. It also includes effort, motivation. So you've got a personality. You are not ill. You have not any, so whatever is positively associated to education. So this is the average, okay? The red curve refers to those who are upper class, while the blue one is lower class. So the correlation is 0.3. Okay. They say, oh, this is eugenetics. No, I mean, it makes sense to the extent that, so genes are transmitted by the parents, and these are genes that affect educational attainment. So it makes sense that if your parents are highly educated, there is a correlation with your genes for education. But it's not extreme. I'm presenting this just to show you that if you focus on one or two, there are many people from the lower class and upper class that have got this value. If you focus on three, then you have a problem. But if you focus on two, there are all these people also from the lower class that are there. So it's not that very few. But particularly if you focus on one, here you've got both upper class and lower class kids. Okay, so these are the results. On the left, we have the standard OLS. So the standard regression that express how the independent variable affects the level of the independent variable. So the averages in years of education. Just focus on the left. So you see that if you have a high polygenetic score, that is called propensity, you have got more years of education. Okay, so if you have high SES, one variation in SES is also standardized, is associated to 0.80, I would say, years of education more. On the right, VRF is the variance regression function. If you focus on this column, you see that the results are more so equal to the OLS. So the first equation is actually equivalent to the normal OLS, while on the right, you have the effect on the variance, on the residuals. And in line a bit with what we expected, we find this negative interaction that means that we find more variance, we find less variance among those who have got a high propensity for education and come from the upper class. Just to visualize the effects is here on the right. So these are for different type of, let's say, family of origins. Focus on -1 and +1 if you want. So CES1 means that your parents are high CES. It goes from -2 to +2, and 0 is the average, okay? You see that the variance is smaller for those whose parents have got CES2 or CES1, okay? While it's higher, blue line and red line, for those who come from the lower class. So if you focus among those who have high propensity for education, we observe more variance among those who are low class. So this is the end of the results. So the graph on the left is the results on years of education. So who gets more year of education or less? In general, the lines are not parallel, but almost parallel, okay? So there is a bit more difference type propensity. So I don't know if I walk or, let's see. No. Okay, so this is difference how much education you get depending on your propensity and your level of education. And you see that in general are parallel. So in general, those who come from 2 upper class gets more always, even if the propensity is low or the propensity is high. I can say a lot because it relates to compensatory advantage and whatever, but what we want to focus on this paper is this graph, and we saw that for the upper class there is less variance. If you are talented, there is no variance, while there is variance among the low CES. Okay, so this is the way we try to contribute to the general questions on the role of education. So as I said, it's very preliminary. I don't have the magic variable that say luck. And there are many other issues I could say, because in principle, if it is luck, so there are questions. Does luck happens equally for the upper class or lower class? If it is chance, it should be independent from social class, okay? But its consequences can be different, so this is the idea. So if you have a stroke of bad luck, like parental death, in certain circumstances it can be bad luck, a car accident or whatever. The consequences are the same from the upper class or lower class. If the police stops you, if you have a problem, you go to a demonstrations, okay? You are 18, you go to a demonstration with the schools against Israel, Palestine, Italy, police is beating you, you do something against the police, you have a problem, okay? Or also here, you can have a big problem. And then you are upper class and lower class. So demonstration is really something we call erratic luck. Things happen that you don't know. And then you are caught by the police. The argument is that if you are upper class, probably you have a good lawyer, you have a second chance, even if you are caught and go to prison, maybe it's just a small scar. If you are from the lower class, you can have, okay, so this is the general idea that we try to study with the variance. So, and this is the analysis with siblings. There is a problem because we have a sample of about 5,000 people. If you want to study siblings, the general disaster that your professor knows is that the sample size becomes very small, and so there is less precision in the estimate. In this case, we are lucky, and we actually get some still precise estimate. Just focus on the left, where I try to explain the logic. So what we do, we study the effect of PGA A of the brother A minus the PGA E of brother B, so a difference in propensity, how this affects the difference in the final years that they attain, okay? And basically, instead of estimating an equation where there is Y PGE, we estimate an equation of the siblings. And for instance, parental expectations or parental income or neighborhood, if they were growing up together, these are the same and get 0. And so we can take out all this part of possible bias. So let me just, and we find also with this much more complicated and strict design, we also find that the results go in the direction we expect, that there is less variance in the case of high SES with high propensity. So these are preliminary. We have to make many robustness checks. We have already done, but I mean, it's simply what it is important for you here is what it is important here for you. I try to summarize here. So the main results, we find evidence that there is more variance in the predicted year of education for low SES with a high propensity for educational attainment, and also for high SES with low propensity for educational attainment. Which I have an explanation, Didrik, because it is related to, I think, to other work, but it's not the topic of this paper. And so this finding is consistent with the idea that educational trajectory for low SES are more fragile and more contingent on things that happen, for good or for bad. And theoretically, I think that good luck, you can conceive it as an opening of opportunities, like a teacher that tell you, you are good, you should go to the university, you are really good, you should go. And you have not conceived that, and so it opens you a path that it was closed, while bad luck is a closing of opportunity. So going back to structure and subject, I would maybe, I mean, it's always nice to say, no, this is meso. Nobody really knows what is meso level, no? But it is in something between the structure and the individuals. I say meso because it goes to structure, because it opens opportunity or close it, but it's also produced by individual trajectories, no? And so it's something that could go there, but it's not really relevant here. Let me give you some more general take-home. So this is just an illustration of a research, and I think is that for you as a master's student, I think it's important that you consider in general not only averages as an outcome, who gets more education, who has a more positive opinion toward immigrants. I don't know the topic you're interested in, but these are the typical topic. Are you favoring gender? Who is more favorable to gender equality? More, less, men, women, more favorable, less favorable. But you also consider the variation. Which group? Is there more variations among men or women in gender attitudes toward equality? I think these type of questions have not been affected very often. So, and I think it's interesting. You will probably find that there is more variations among men than women if you focus on public attitudes toward gender equality. The same, public attitudes toward immigrants. We know that, I don't know, if you are highly educated, I mean, it's tricky. Maybe you have a more favorable public opinion toward immigrants, but there is also legitimate questions on whether there is more variations among highly educated and low educated in their support for immigrants or not, okay? In general, okay, no, I don't say this, but just I recommend to, because I can come back, but just look also to variance. Consider heterogeneity, so not simply additive models, but try to think in terms of intersections. Here is social class and genetic propensity. You can think about social class and gender, or social background, or native immigrants' gender. So you just look at combinations of different factors. Addressing causality might be unavoidable if you do certain type of research. So you will have maybe to consider the siblings type of design I was explaining above. And also think a lot about your research question. So I don't know how I'm doing about time, because at the end I thought, okay, I've got some more reflections for really the students. 1 hour? I finish. So these are the type of research questions I get also being an editor of the journal, and you might want to consider for your master or PhD. So one type of question is, which factors affect public opinion toward migration? I don't like this type of questions. So you have like 10 factors like gender, class, education, and then you have a big models, and you say, oh, this has got an effect, this other has not, and so is which the question, no? Then you have a type of descriptive question that is not very popular, but I think is very important. It's like, has gender segregation declined over time? And then, okay, this is a descriptive question, yes, no. Then you have a type of causal question. Does stress during pregnancy affect child's weight at birth? Or does school compositions affect school achievement? So you want to study whether the effect X has an effect on Y. So here you need a causal design. And finally, the type of question that I like more is why. And so first you establish that gender segregation has declined over time, and then you try to explain this social fact. Okay? And this you can do with different methods. What I think is important is also to think about implication analysis. Not simply I've got a model where I introduce the variable X and I show that this variable X has an effect, but in terms of implication. And it was a bit what I was trying to do today, saying if it is true that the career trajectories of lower class are more fragile, then we should observe this in a different way than measuring luck. So I measure luck and I show that luck is more consequential. So this is maybe something I want to do, but sometimes it's not possible. And so if you're a sociologist, then probably you have read Durkheim's book on suicide. All he does is to develop hypotheses that are implications drawn from his theory. So if it is this type of suicide, I should observe, and it does so to exclude explanation like diffusion. So if divorce is actually a behavior that is imitation from other people, we should observe a pattern that goes from the center to the periphery. So it's an implication of this theory. It's not able to study whether people who suicide imitate the other. This is, I'm just saying because 90% of the sociological study try to do this. I want to measure whether there is imitation or not. And then maybe they try to have some variables, but I think it is much more powerful what I've written here. There is implication analysis. There is a guy that has died that is called Liberson, a bit same age as, old. The joke I was making about Paleolithic, so there is another article by Paleolithic that is called by Liberson or implication analysis, and I think this you should keep in your reading list to think about doing things also differently. So I stop here. Thank you very much.
That is work. Okay, thank you very much, Fabrizio. Now we have some time, half an hour more or less, for discussion and questions. Is there anyone who wants to? Martí? Yeah.
Thank you. I really enjoy your presentation. Thank you. Lots of for thought, and I have lots of questions. But I was thinking which ones could be more useful if they are you are in the early stages. So the first one is about how you were interpreting epsilon. So kind of what you were suggesting is that epsilon is luck in life. But usually what I use or how I used to interpret epsilon is that this is error due to sampling or this is error due to data measurement, that this can be correlated with socioeconomic status or PGI in this case. So do you think in your method you have a way of distinguishing like this part? And the second one, I don't know if it's, I will express it clearly, but as you suggested in your initial examples, some part of the luck is related with a threshold, right? So if you are above 70 or you are below 70. And if you consider variance, you are considering basically that the curve is like follows a normal distribution, is not skewed. So if the threshold is very high, the ones who have a larger variance would take it, would have larger chance to be there. If the variance is it's lower, then the people who is more close to the mean, the group who is close to the mean would get it more, or at least. So so what I am afraid is that if you are talking about variance or you are talking to a skewness, like that the variance is slightly skewed in some way, and how you could like interpret this. Thank you.
Both are very good. Both are very good. Both are very good questions. Regarding the first one, we interpret epsilon as luck, and you are right that we could put different labels, as someone has done, putting it precarity, insecurity, or measurement error. With regard to the specific idea of measurement error, the argument would be that there is more measurement errors instead of educations for low-class people, okay? Which might make sense. The idea is that they are less able to answer a question, even if the question is, what is your level of education? So it's not too complicated questions. I would argue that when we make the sibling design, so if there is a general measurement error for those who are low class is your family of origins, so in principle we should observe the same error for brothers who come from the same setting. So in that respect, I think that design partial out as long as it is systematic for those who are low class. So okay, so that would be the answer. And also the second, I think, is a very good question. The idea here, so I think you're right, so there are thresholds. In this case, I was discussing as a general mechanism. We are not discussing the results of an exam with the thresholds. This is year of education, so thresholds is US, so I don't know which role they play. They might play along the way in terms of getting a grant or not, but it's not the only mechanism. So I think it's relevant what you said, that having more or less variance can bring more people close to the thresholds. I was thinking it more in terms, the upper class, if it is the threshold is 70 and upper class has on average a better performance, there will be more people that are always above 70. So they are not at risk of this one digit, while the lower class might be more really close to the entry, no entry thresholds. So it is part skewness, but also the general average. I think for this dependent variable, that is year of education, is less of a problem because it's not really whether you imagine that we do this for entry, I don't know, in Abitur in Germany or another exam like in the Netherlands where there is a strict cutoff, then you have this issue. We are working in a different paper on projects and whether there is more luck involved financing project with strict thresholds, super high, I just finance very few projects like an ERC, or in a system that like, I don't know, I+D in Spain where it's more, let's say, we finance more projects and so we move the thresholds. So imagine a system where the threshold, there are points, just to explain to everybody, from 0 to 100. And I say, I only finance 2 projects. I finance project 99 and 98. Okay? And another system that say, I finance project up to 70. And the question we have, is more luck involved in the first system or in the second system? So we are doing this. And the answer is, at least my intuition, but it seems so, that there is more luck in the very selective system. Because all the projects that are financed with a very selective system need a great amount of luck to being financed. While if it is 70, the very good projects are entering, and then the same luck is just applying to a threshold. It is a bit counterintuitive because with the very selective, only very good projects are selected, but they need also to be very lucky. Okay, but I think the argument on skewness we have to consider at some point. Sorry, I tend to. So.
Thank you. I think it's very suggestive. I particularly like the way of sort of identifying or isolating lag by way of using these genetic markers, and I think the idea is in principle quite convincing. I was very struck at the beginning of your talk by what you said about the R-square not having diminished over time in the explanation of some things. I mean, it's true that we have better models, better data. So my question relates to the R-square in a way. Whenever you introduce these genetic markers, and whenever you, if I have understood you well, whenever you interact these genetic markers or this lag, this is like I assume that this is your way of capturing like the interaction of the genetic marker with the SES, thus the R-square diminishes substantially, because this would be the way of demonstrating that the way of how lag is affecting different levels of socioeconomic origin is explaining something. No? That's one of the things that I was having in mind. And the second thing is that it strikes me that, just a comment, it strikes me that the R-square has not diminished. This is already something that it would be really nice to find in an article, no? I mean, like a meta-analysis showing you that no matter how much sociology education has developed, the R-square has not, or the level, the amount of the variance that it's explained has not decreased. But then we have the artificial intelligence telling you that we are, human beings, more and more able to predict the behavior, which is, the behavior could be attending university.
I start from the first one, even if the second is more engaging. So it has not improved. So if we include the genetic indexes that have been created, the R-square still remains. And also if we include the neighborhood, if we include the big five, if we use, as I said, these new methods, random forests that allow you to consider all the combinations of the 20 variables you have, it still remains largely unexplained. To your questions, if you include the polygenetic score, these have a really little predictive power. So it might be that they are still developing and it will improve over time, and so we will get better measurement of genes. But my understanding or my intuition is that it will not substantially improve, because, yeah, and it doesn't explain a large part of socioeconomic status, okay? So there is a correlation, so it's not really improving. And so what I'm now trying to, I've presented a project to try to collect this, so we made a qualitative survey and we asked people to think about specific moment in their life, a specific educational transition, if something happened that they can define as luck that was important to their educational achievement, and also ask the counterfactual, if this would have not happened, like the case of the exam 71, what would have been your educational attainment, no? So if the counterfactual, or if you hadn't had this teacher coming to substitute the other that was telling you are very good, what would have happened? So I'm trying to find a way to have this in a quantitative survey, to ask people, can you think a specific event of good luck and bad luck? Then I want to see if we're actually able to improve the R-square. So I want to say that there was a study that I recommend. Salganic is a professor in computational sociology, this is the final table that I'm discussing about the flavor of research. When I was in your situation, everything was about mechanisms, and really what you had to do was to get longitudinal data, to do event history analysis. So I made my career out of teaching event history analysis, that I don't think that is not popular anymore. But so then I moved to causality. I think I will skip machine learning and go to luck, just to do something new. Then there was the causal revolution, let's say 2000 and, I don't know, maybe Giampiero, you were in the causal revolution? Yeah, I think so. Yes. So experiment, natural experiment, so I was teaching this. And now the flavor of the master or PhD is computational sociology, to use Twitter data, to use TikTok data, to use administrative data, or to use genomics, okay, that I was telling you. And the method is machine learning or random forest and whatever. So what is next? The intelligence AI. There was an interesting talk, maybe it was too early, you were not here, at the CSR conference, so I'm talking to the MA by Kim Weeding, and she was calling for a descriptive revolution, so somehow going back just to a thick descriptions of a research question was, as gender segregation declined over time. So I think this is less trendy, but for a master could also be this type of question, no? Valuable. So to your question on IA, actually it's not, so there is a study that made by Salganic, where they use this IA with different methods, machine learning, and they say, yes, we are able to predict much more, but they are still at 45%. So it's not that really we are able to explain everything. And there are some outcomes that are more predictable than others. Okay, so if you want to predict high school achievement, we are much better in predicting high school achievement if you're from the upper class. 99% of people that come from the upper class achieve high school, so it's easy. If you go to PhD, okay, from the upper class, I mean, it depends. If your parents have got a PhD, it's 50%, no? But if you are first generation student, it's 0.05. So it's really, with some outcome that are somehow rare, is very, so I don't think, so I mean, the results show that it's not the case, so.
Is it working? Hello? Oh, okay, it's working. I have a way easier question. I just wasn't sure about like the definition of luck, because I feel like there's like a very fine line between luck and events that could be prevented in a sense. Maybe like the example that you talked about, like someone living in the States having weed in their pocket and police like catch him, you know? Because I feel like in that case, it's preventable, because if you know, they can, you know, catch you, and you can possibly like, it can like ruin your life. You could have just done the weed at home. So yeah, I wanted to ask about that. That is the policy recommendation, do the weed at home. No, you are right. So the general definition is like, as I said, chance plus consequences. Another stream in philosophy says lack of control, so things that happens out of your control. But you are certainly right with examples. The idea is that it is very unlikely because you have always done it, and maybe you are just with other people you don't know in the same car, and then you have a problem. Okay, so it's something that is really unlikely it happens. So maybe it's not the best example, but the idea is that there should be a chance component, so that you can call it risky behavior. So you're right. So that shouldn't is probably a wrong example. So I would just more, you know, in US, not in Europe, you can be stopped because you're going to, there is speed, and then they give you a ticket,
and then you do something that is wrong, and you can have serious problems. So there is all a policy to introduce camera because they are more neutral, they don't shoot, and so that's the type of encounter that I was saying. I was saying a demonstration. Of course, you cannot go. My other examples, you have a problem because you go to a demonstration. So if you don't go to the demonstration, there is no luck. Okay, bad luck. I think you make a good point, but in general, the idea also in the type of luck, sorry, now I go to somehow a related topic, is that if you stay at home, always, nothing happens, okay? Neither bad luck nor good luck. At least the type of luck, one type of luck that is simply trajectories that intersect. And this also brings to the question, you know, all this, I mean, it's a topic that is nice because there is a huge literature, many novels, as I said. There is this sentence by Virgilio that says, fortune helps the brave. You know, probably you have heard, no? So if you are searching for luck, you can maybe find it, no? There's another sentence by an Italian, maybe Giampiero might know it, but no, because it's also from the Paleolithic, Sciantos, that say that they say that luck is blind, but bad luck, for which we have a specific word in Italian, with me, but bad luck sees very well. Okay, so there is this topic that goes against the idea that is equal for upper class and lower class. But okay, sorry. I think is a very good question. So risky behavior should not be included in luck.
Then I remember.
Prova. Okay. First of all, thank you for your presentation. Very, very interesting topic. But to me, it seems unclear the chain of causality that there is and that occurs in the independent variable, the genomics one, because to me it seems that there is a lack of focus due to the maybe cumulative advantage that could affect the genomics variable. So, because for instance, how the marriage market works, high-class people tend to marry high-class people, and there is also a good chance that these ones are high-educated, and so there is, a sort of advantage prior to the genomics that they could also have high-skilled or high-educated kids with a good genomics in their blood, something like that. So there is this cumulative advantage that could confound this genomics variable, a sort of, I don't know how to say it in English, so I will say to you in Italian, the parabola di San Matteo, the rich get richer effect.
I mean, you are right, even technically, there is a discussions on the possible bias associated to the effects of PGE, of this polygenetic code, that is called assortative mating, so that highly educated tend to mate with highly educated partners. And so the PGE somehow reflects these processes through other mechanisms that we are not studying here. So the PGE is biased. So the sibling design is precisely conceived to address these limitations of the PGE itself. Because to the extent that we compare brothers and sisters, they come from the same family, and so they are both exposed to this, you call it cumulative advantage, or to these additional resources that we are not measuring. So methodologically, this design with siblings address the type of problems you are mentioning.
Hello. Hi. Okay. You said that you're not really using genetics right now, but that you want to use them in the future. But then how would you account... Oh, sorry. How would you account for, in the future, the fact that genes affect your environment, but then the environment affects your genes? I don't know if that makes sense.
So there are two types of questions. So we are using it now. So we are using it. No, we are using this propensity. What is labeled here propensity is one of this polygenetic score that is very easy. So you just apply. It's a bit long. You apply for ad health, and you have a list of this PGE for many behavioral traits you might be interested, like health, cognitive skills, externalizing behavior, body mass index. So if you work on this topic, like health, you might be interested in having this indicator that is like a genetic channel that might affect your independent variable, okay? So it's easy. You get this list, and then you just have an additional regression. So, as I said, there were two questions. So the first one is that this procedure that I'm describing here, the PGE, is also reflecting part of the environment, okay? So now there are developments to try to account for this issue. One is to do the siblings that we do, but now they're just collecting these genetics also for the parents. So you can have both the polygenetic score of the children and of the parents. It's called trio design. And also now they're computing this already comparing siblings. So there is this developing very fast precisely to address the first of your questions. Namely, these PGE are biased. So this number that I'm arguing, not me, but is sold as a genetic propensity, actually part of it is actually environment. And the second question is, okay, imagine that we are able to isolate this real genetic propensity, then what it is interesting is to study the gene-environment interaction. And this is something that is also important to do because conditioning to the idea that we are able to measure properly the genes, I think the interesting question is how this effect depends on where you live, the time in which you live. No, there is a classic example. You could have been very smart with a high polygenetic score for education, but living in a society that is highly segregated, where women were not allowed to study, there is no effect of PGE, okay? So all this, because women are not allowed to study. Or if you are black in US in the 50s, the polygenetic score doesn't explain anything. So everything is conditional to the environment. But I think the first question is important. That is a very imprecise measure, very biased. What I say polygenetic score for education is also reflecting upper class. Doing the siblings partly address that problem. There is a question here.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It is a question of understanding. When you began by defining the luck, you said you were going to investigate the chancy luck, which is what happens to us. So this, okay. But after you are using the PG, which is more with the constitutive luck of what we are, can you just clarify to me, please?
So, very good. This is a problem of the framing of the paper. So at a certain point we were saying, okay, we try to operationalize the three types of luck. Okay, so PGE is effectively constitutive luck. So the luck due to the genetic lottery, whether you are endowed to study or not. So you're totally right. But what we do is that we interpret the variation, the epsilon, so this graph, as chancy luck. So to a certain extent, we measure constitutive luck, if you want. We have also, so at a certain point I said, oh, this is very nice. We can have an indicator of constitutive luck, like genes. Then we can introduce the year and month of birth and the county of birth, so where you were born and when, And then we have this circumstantial luck. You remember, I said the Nazi example. You are born in 1920 is different from being born in Argentina or in Germany. And then we have got chancy luck, and we don't have any indicator for chancy luck. So it's, as I said, an implication analysis. If it is true that the educational trajectory of the lower class are more fragile, we should observe more variation. So I don't know if it is clear, but I don't have a direct indicator of chancy luck. So probably in the paper we will not discuss constitutive and circumstantial because it is confusing. We will just go to chancy luck and that's it. But that is the idea. The idea is that in life course research and in social stratification we are well equipped to measure constitutive luck with a different name, like it's called ascribed characteristics. It's like gender, it's like now genes or class of origins, ethnic background. All these are constitutive luck. We are well equipped, so we are able to measure circumstantial luck in terms of period, in terms of all the debate in demography or court period and age, and also the concept of generation. That is sociological, it's not demographical. So the fact that something happens in some impressionable years and affect your way of, I don't know if probably have studied Mannheim in your undergraduate studies, but the idea is that something happens that join you, so something significant happens, like COVID, okay? So you were all studying your undergrad during COVID, and so this maybe have marked you in a way that you will bring with you for all your life, or in Spain, 15M, or, this is generation. So we are well equipped to study the circumstantial luck, or something that we got in our interview. You are from Poland, or you are from East Germany, and the walls goes down, okay? And you are a generation. You are a generation because you are 18, and then you are lucky, because it happens when you are 18, so you have a chance to study in unified Germany. The same events happen when you are 35, you have already studied. Your study in East Germany doesn't matter anything. And so this is unluck. You have to redo your life. You cannot move because you have children and whatever. So, and this is generation. So I'm just saying that as a sociologist and a demographer, what it is called constitutive and circumstantial is what we do with a different name from the philosopher, but is what we have been doing. What we are missing is the other understanding of things that happens, okay? And I'm sure that if I ask you how you have arrived here, making the master at Pompeu Fabra, and you think about some critical events, maybe you applied here and not to Trento or to another place, or you met someone, or you were admitted, not admitted, and then probably, particularly if you are first generation, that means if your parents have not studied at the university, maybe there is some of this critical situation, and also if you are second generation, it is likely that maybe you could have gone to another place. If you are not admitted here, and maybe you are lucky, you would have gone to, I don't know, Carlo III or somewhere else in Spain or somewhere else in Italy, and there are some things where your life could have gone in a different way. You met someone, you decided you come here or not. So. But this is something that we are not able to study, okay? Now, I hope that with this research agenda and why I'm studying this, because sometimes people say, why are you studying? I mean, okay, nice. It's nice because you like books, you like movies, everybody likes it. I think it's very interesting because it clashes the meritocratic narrative that, if you have success, it's due to your effort and your merits and your hard work. And if we are able to recognize that luck plays an important role, good and bad luck, we might collectively more willing to, redistribute and to acknowledge that we have success because we were lucky, and also to give more protection to those who were unlucky. So I think that politically is not so irrelevant. I mean, actually, I think it is relevant to discuss this issue and to acknowledge that there are factors, and you can ensure. So a bit what you were saying about risky behavior, you don't do it, but also, you know, to protect. Another issue that it is important okay, no, I promised myself that I make this joke the last time. So if I do it one more, you tell me, and is that I work at the UNED, so I don't teach. So when I got a microphone, I speak, okay? Last time I make the joke. So lotteries. Diederik made a paper on lotteries some times ago, but it was, I mean, it's not your most successful paper, no? The successful are the one we made together. No. It's the one you many more. So going back to projects, no? There are some countries where to decide whether projects are financed or not, there is a lottery system. Like all the projects that are close to the thresholds, I was saying, so it's very frustrating. If I speak with the colleagues, we all know this experience that you are a project that is rejected, and you know, in order to get the project, you need, I don't know, 60 points, and you have 58, 59, and then you get crazy. You say, I want to kill the referee, why 1 point? Luckily, it does not happen, but there are no arms in Europe, and we don't know the name of the referee, but I know that we would like to kill them, no? So in some countries, like Switzerland, all the projects that are close to 60, between 55 and 65, enters a lottery. And then there is a lottery, and those who win get finance, and those who lose, lose. But apparently, I don't know, but they told me that researchers are much more happier with this system, are able to accept it. They accept this system. Okay, I was unlucky. I was close, but I was unlucky. Then with a system where they tell you, no, you failed. You were 58, you missed 2 points, and there was someone who had 61 that was better than you, and you don't believe that, okay? So this type of lottery is another system where is a system that we might also want to implement more explicitly, okay? Just admission based on a lottery. And actually in some countries like the Netherlands, in the past, admission to medicine was based on a lottery. I didn't know that. And also if you think about US, so there are lotteries. Like in US, for the Vietnam War, there was a lottery. For the green card, there is a lottery. So in administration, entry on childcare in some municipalities, a lottery. So this is another topic of my research, just trying to understand where explicitly the public administration use lotteries to allocate. And in Sparta, the government was chosen by a lottery, which may also be something that we might want to consider.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry I was late, but just a comment, just listening to your final remarks, I also think that this is a claim for modesty, right? I mean, if you're right, we should all learn how to be more modest about even our successes, because it's also a matter of luck, and not everyone is ready to acknowledge it. So yeah, I also thank you for this, because in terms of protection, you're right, it's an implication, but also on how we, deal with our successes or failures.
I don't know, is there time for a final one? No, maybe we should go just for lunch. On this 10 minutes, okay. Huh? Oh, and you have time, but we should also get lunch as well. I have one question. I have two, but I will just make one. One is related to this one, because then at some point you should answer the question of why you see a stronger effect of SES for high polygenic scores, which is a bit against compensatory advantage, no? But I don't want to tease you too much with this. But my question, I guess, is related to the introduction of your talk, because you kind of started from the idea that, okay, we are getting better data, less measurement error, less sampling error, bigger sample sizes, and this should be, in a way, reflected in a higher R squared, larger variance that you explained. So you said, because we don't, this suggests there is some underlying thing that we don't measure that is causing this variation, luck. And this is based, to me, on the assumption, in a way, that the role of luck hasn't changed over time, historical time. So I guess my question, more substantive question is, do you think, the role of luck has changed over time or not? Because I can imagine, in the past.
You could also frame it, the role of luck in different societies. And I've got the intuition that luck is more important in open society than in very, structured or where there is, authoritarian society, there is less space for luck. If everything is more predictable, if you take Soviet Union or if you take, in general, Soviet Union, and you take a society like US with less institutions, okay? So the problem is that, in my understanding, so I think it's a very good question, and the question is if the R square has remained constant and if the R square is similar across country, this suggests that the role of luck is the same everywhere, which might not be likely, okay? So it's not a proper question, so I don't think that luck explains the 50% that we are not explaining. I'm more thinking about, I don't know why, but I'm thinking something more 50% of this, which would be a lot already. The point is that there are two types of luck that I'm now, in the qualitative paper, we try to come up with a typology. So there is institutional luck, three. One is erratic luck. So things that happens because there is confusion, like, I don't know, you have not ever been, but if you have been in a selection committee, I've been in many, and there are 5 professors, 6 professors, and there are selecting someone, and then someone go to the toilet. Barcelona has won yesterday, so someone is very happy, and then another one is fighting, and then there is a third candidate that nobody wants, but suddenly the third candidates win because there is a fight between the two, and the third has gone to the toilet, and so there are examples in history, not only for the selection, but if you take. There is a very nice article, I'm answering very slowly to your question, so I don't know, Ermakov is called. He studied a specific situation where the nobles in France during the French Revolution actually destroyed themselves, renounced all the privilege. So he's studying this situation that are completely irrational. The night at the French Assembly where the nobles and the church renounced to their privilege in favor of the third estate. And it's something that nobody could predict, and it was something that nobody expected, and it is something that now you read history and it is kind of a logical development. It wasn't at all, okay? And it was a very erratic, confusing situation, and they did something that it is irrational. Okay, good. 2 types of luck on beside the institutional luck. So we make rules for selection committee. We follow these rules. But as soon as you introduce rules, you introduce also this type of luck I was discussing of the thresholds. We select projects that are above or below this, and then for just being above or below is a matter of, again, luck. And then there is the other type of luck that are occasional encounters, so trajectory of people that meet. And this, I think, should vary over time. With a more open society, globalized society, you are more exposed than 50 years ago to information that you can get on Twitter. And so in principle, it should have increased because we move more. You can come studying in Barcelona, something that 50 years ago was not, there was no master program, so, and there was no Pompeu Fabra, so you couldn't have come, okay? So, but I think it's a good question, but I think that one type of luck might be reduced, like institutional luck in Soviet Union. Everything was predictable, and there were no encounters, and then one thing happens, and and another type of luck become more relevant, no? So, but I think it is a good. I think it is a good question. Okay, but in terms of bad luck, I think the welfare state reduce the effect of bad luck. Okay, so if you have a program, educational system working very well, something bad happens to your family, someone in your family dies, but the school is working, there are grants, you go on. So you are less exposed to bad luck if there is the welfare state, for instance. Okay, so I'm thinking in terms of institution, which is a problem, as you said, because if it is always constant, we should observe some variation. So maybe there is some measurement error, maybe there are things that, maybe the R-square is wrong, but still also if we use other measures for dichotomous outcome, we're still not able to predict who divorces or who does not, okay? So so I think that, I think it's a good question. So as I said, I'm approaching it. And this compensatory, I tell you later.
Okay. Thank you again, Fabrizio, for your talk and for being here today. Now I think we can close the session. And so, and there will be a small refreshment. I don't know how small or big it will be. Just follow me and you will find the food, okay?